Decolonialist ideology is being applied inappropriately to England and is being used to rob us of our history and brainwash our children to think they are not the original inhabitants of this land. I will show you how this has been done. So you remember back in 2014 when it was established that hunter-gatherers probably had blue eyes and dark skin. Now you'll notice in this estimation that they've drawn here that the dark skin is darkish, right? We are talking about people who look like maybe Southern European or possibly slightly darker. But of course he's got blue eyes because he is a European man. Now, this was then parlayed into this figure. Now you'll notice that this figure has, this recreation, has much darker skin than before. What are the odds? Why would they be doing that, you might think? Because, and the thing is, I'm not here to debate the rights and wrongs of the science of it. I don't know, and I don't really care. I could believe that I've seen it being said by reports and people who are referencing studies that white skin developed in Europe about 7,000 years ago, something like that. So 10,000 years ago, or whatever Cheddar Man lived, yeah, he would have had darker skin than modern Europeans. Fair enough. But was it that dark? What would be the need to have skin this dark in Europe? I mean, vitamin D levels are a real problem for African immigrants to Europe. They actually do need, and it's actually really common amongst African immigrants in Europe for them to just have a culture in their own communities of taking vitamin D because this is an issue. And so, I mean, you could see why white skin would evolve because we need to see more sun than people on the equator. But also, it's more reasonable that he would be this sort of colour than this sort of colour. Because this sort of colour is designed to protect you from the harmful rays of the sun. And I'm just saying, in Britain, it's not such a problem, actually. I've been out in the sun all weekend. I'm not exactly scorched, am I? Anyway, so the reason I say this, and the reason this matters, is because, as you can see from this, we actually know that we are linearly descended from those ancient Britons 10,000 years ago. And in fact, there was a history teacher a mile and a half away or something from Cheddar Gorge where Cheddar Man was found, who, after DNA testing, they found was directly descended from this man. So 10,000 years, his family have lived in this area, at least in part. That is a level of consistency that it's almost impossible to imagine, and you wouldn't have made it up, and you would never have guessed, right? I bet he wouldn't have thought that his ancestors had been here for 10,000 years. Weirdly, they look kind of similar as well, don't they? I bet he wouldn't have thought this. And so this is probably more likely than this. And this, I find this totally reasonable, completely believe it. But the important part is the lineal descent. As in, there is an unbroken chain that links Cheddar Man to modern Englishmen living today. And this is the important part, because even if he did have skin this dark, he is not what we would call in the modern day black. Black people is an appellation that we use to describe sub-Saharan Africans, people from Africa. Now, even if they have a similar skin tone to this guy, and this guy is correct, which, like I say, I highly doubt, I think it's going to be a lot closer to this guy, there is no lineal connection between sub-Saharan Africans and the ancestors of Northwest Europeans. They are two different peoples with two different histories, two different lineages, and therefore two different claims on two different continents. This matters because of what they've been teaching our children in schools. So apparently on decolonized history curriculums, a book called Brilliant Black British History by a Nigerian has informed our children that Britain was a black country for more than 7,000 years before white people came. That's not true. That's just a lie. That is a lie by Atinuki, a Nigerian-born British author. So a foreigner has moved here and decided to try and disinherit our children of their most ancient lineage and connection to their own country by saying because evolution is a thing and people change over time, then they are actually invaders to their own homelands. And in fact, some people from sub-Saharan Africa have more of a claim to being indigenous to Britain than the people whose ancestors 10,000 years ago, who literally, and it literally is their ancestors 10,000 years ago, have less of a claim. This is preposterous. This is just an attack on our culture and our people and our legitimate claim to live in our own homelands. This is a form of colonization being done under the word decolonization. This is our culture being colonized by foreigners, by, in this case, a Nigerian who is using race politics to try and justify his presence here and delegitimize yours. The report has described the book as one example of how the push to decolonize or diversify history curriculums has gone too far. Gone too far? You think that's just a little bit, right? It's kind of understating it. Kind of like understating just how evil a thing that is being done to our children, right? Kids are very susceptible to whatever you teach them because they don't know any better. And if you're in a position of authority, they trust you. Therefore, telling them lies that black people ruled the country before white people came is just, it's evil to do this to our children. Why are we allowing this evil to be done to our children? The people involved in this should probably be prosecuted for something. At the very least, denaturalized and deported. How dare you come to this country, lie to our children that they aren't actually the people who rightfully own the country, and actually try to put it into the hands of other people? How fucking dare you do this? Anyway, so apparently 83% of secondary schools have changed their history curriculum to decolonize it. So they've changed their history curriculum to lie to their children, to lie to their students, in the name of diversification and decolonization and being woke. That's the point of this, right? The report says, in some cases, this had a positive effect. It's exposing students to varied and knowledge-rich studies that better cover key areas of British history, such as the women's suffrage movement, as well as a wider range of world history. However, in too many cases, the process has gone too far. Why are we being so soft on this? Why are we being so soft on this? I mean, if you want kids to know more about the women's suffrage movement or whatever else, then just teach it. We don't need to lie to them. Anyway, numerous cases of poor quality resources being used to teach contested narratives as fact have been identified. For example, one book used in classrooms claims black people built Stonehenge. True. That's absolutely not true. Even if they looked like this guy is not black. This guy is an ancient Briton who is directly related to modern Britons. Because again, Britain has had a remarkably stable gene pool for the last 10,000 years. Free resource produced by a subject organization celebrate the genital mutilation of slaves as a form of gender transition. That is barbaric, isn't it? So you know what, those slaves who are being castrated, I presume by the Arabs in the Arab slave trade, this is just a form of transition. I mean, that is a genuinely monstrous thing that was done to those people, and this interpretation is absolutely disgraceful. I'm genuinely... There are a few things that actually shock me these days, right? I've seen a lot of stuff. And this is... I mean, it's just monstrous. It's just actually monstrous. Anyway, they say that in some cases, students struggle to develop a synoptic outline of the national past and are exposed to one-sided and politicized narratives. Yes, they're being propagandized to not even understand their own country's history. So when it's taken away from them, they won't have the wherewithal to resist. If you can't come up with a broad synopsis of what Britain is and the general narrative of the country, then we're in trouble, aren't we? I mean, I can. Back when I was in school, it was pretty vague, but it was at least there. It was, yeah, we're the hunter-gatherer Britons built Stonehenge. Then the Romans eventually came, then the Anglo-Saxons came, then we revisited the Danes, then the Normans conquered Britain, England anyway, and then eventually you had the 707 Acts of Union, and then Britain became a gargantuan world-spanning empire, and then we defeated the Nazis. So that's a pretty straightforward but accurate picture, even if it's broad and not very well filled in. At least the general tone and theme is correct. This is just lies. This is just outright lies. Oh, by the way, black people lived in Britain for some reason. Don't know why they didn't live in Africa. Don't know how they got here. Then suddenly white people came from somewhere. Who knows where they came from? And there we go. Blah, 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 blah. That's why Britain's a white country now, not a black country now. Don't you feel like a colonizer? Like, no. The people in Britain, the white European, Northwest European native Britons, are not colonizers. They are, in fact, the ancient indigenous people of these islands. That is just a fact. Because I know this is difficult for lefties to understand, but white people actually come from somewhere, right? As much as I appreciate black history as much as anyone else, Yakub actually didn't create us. He actually didn't create us as a revenge on mankind. Actually, we just come from Europe. That's just it. We just come from Europe. Like, this is a shock. I know, revelation. But anyway, its research shows that key elements of British history have been dropped by schools, as fewer than 1 in 5 teach the Battle of Agincourt. Only 11% include Trafalgar and Waterloo. I mean, these are Agincourt, fair enough, right? You don't lose that much about British history in general if you don't know about Agincourt, right? I don't think I was taught about Agincourt in school. I mean, maybe there must have been something on the 100 Years' War, but I can't really remember it. But if you don't learn about Trafalgar and Waterloo, you don't understand why the world uses English as its lingua franca, right? The battles of Trafalgar and Waterloo are so pivotal to understand the modern world as it is now, that the fact that only 11% included show that the entire purpose of modern history lessons in Britain is to make sure that they know nothing about the past. So whatever is being presented to them can be presented, and they'll just go, well, I mean, I don't know any different. I'll just accept all of this infinite immigration. I'll accept the fact that we need to decolonize Oxford, as if Oxford University wasn't founded by English people in like the 13th century or whatever it was. Like this is preposterous nonsense, but it's designed to disinherit future generations. So basically, if you're a parent watching this, you have an obligation to actually teach your children history, right? One thing that I did with my son when he was, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old, I just began, like, once or twice a week, we'd sit down and do half an hour of reading, right? And I made him read Winston Churchill's History of the English-Speaking People. Now, have whatever opinion you want on Churchill and have that as you like, but his writing is superb and his history is perfectly good and basically just fairly stock history up until, I guess, yesterday when we started doing stuff like this. And it gives your children a very firm understanding of how the English came to be in England and what this is all about, what has actually happened here. And that, honestly, is something you as a parent are just going to have to do yourself. You can't rely on the schools anymore. The schools are full of subversive leftists who have designs on your children and what they believe. You have to take this seriously, as I am taking this seriously, as other parents I know are taking this seriously. They are trying to ruin the minds of your children. That's what they're doing. And as the historian Lord Roberts puts, the education of this topic should be the birthright of English pupils. And that's why they're doing it. That's why they're trying to take this away from them. They are trying to rob them of their birthright. He says, it is vital that pupils are taught the history of their own nation in a manner that seeks to do more than simply inculcate shame about our past. The point is to make sure that they will reject their own culture, their own country, their own history, so that it can be more easily taken over by foreigners. That's the point of all of this. If you are a parent who is worried about the education your children are getting, you can do this yourself. You can go over to courses.lotuses.com and buy them the Trivium, which is grammar, logic, and rhetoric. There's a bundle of 3 courses, which you could buy separately if you wanted, but you get a discount buying them all at once. And this is what every 12-year-old used to do in school, right up until the middle of the 20th century, which is why, if you go back and watch footage of people from like the 1960s, they sound so articulate and intelligent, because when they were at school, they did the Trivium. I didn't do the trivium. Any learning that I have, any skills that I've had to learn myself. And we are going to have to do the same for our own children. Unfortunately, this is just the nature of the beast, because apparently the government has decided it is okay to not only steal the level of education from us and our children that we should have had, but also to lie to them about what their own history is. So I'll leave the link in the description. I realize that 375 is a lot, but it is a course. It isn't YouTube videos. You have tests, you have lectures, and it's completely worth your time. I promise you, you will not regret it.